The other day, a colleague of mine sent me an email asking what I thought about the latest press release from the IRS about ERC, the Employee Retention Credit. As I read the headline, IRS Commissioner signals new phase of Employee Retention Credit work with backlog eliminated. Additional procedures will be put in place to deal with growing fraud risk. And no, it wasn't the headline they were asking me about, but specifically, if we scroll down just a little bit, a few clarifications about qualifiers for the Employee Retention Credit, if the rules had changed, and what their business needs to know. So today, I'm going to share with you the latest updates of the Employee Retention Credit. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss this. I'm Rich Smith, and one of the money lessons they never teach you in school is exactly what to do when the IRS contacts you about anything. Whether it's a letter in the mail, a notice, or even some sort of press release that you think applies to you. So today, I'm going to break down all the details of this latest IRS update and give you some input on how I think you can move forward. But real quick, please drop a like for this video. It's going to help spread the word to many more people like yourself. So if we take a look at the IRS update, the one from the commissioner who's explaining how they are clearing up the backlog and they are cracking down on fraud. The specific points that I want to highlight today, look into the supply chain disruption qualifier. This is essentially an exception to some sort of qualification for the Employee Retention Credit. Now, before I lose you, I just want to explain that in order to get this credit legitimately, you needed to have been a business with W-2 employees on the books during 2020 and or 2021. Now, if you kept your employees on and paid them and experienced one of the qualifiers I'm about to say, then you could have applied for the Employee Retention Credit in a given quarter, or even retroactively go back up into 2025 and get back some of that money. Now, the first qualifier would be if your business in any given quarter experienced a significant reduction in its gross revenue. Again, in 2020, they weren't as generous, but if you look at 2019 and compare it to 2020 and you were down, then it's worth looking into. If your books were down for 2021 compared to 2019, then again, Employee Retention Credit is worth looking into. Now, the second qualifier is going to lead us to this supply chain disruption question, and it has to do with full or partial shutdown of your operations. And this had to be due to a governmental order. For example, it could have been something federal, at the state level, the local level. It had to be something in writing that you can essentially right now go back and cite. Now, one little exception to the rule that has to do with supply chain disruption is they've said all along that if you were unable to get critical goods or supplies or products due to some sort of supply chain disruption, and your supplier or your vendor could point to a governmental mandate, then essentially you were able to step into the shoes of your vendor, of your merchant, basically whoever's giving you or selling you those supplies, those materials, those products. And you were able to qualify for the Employee Retention Credit through full or partial shutdown. So let me give you an example that speaks directly to a specific area that keeps coming up again and again for me, and it has to do with optometrists, people who needed to provide things like contact lenses, eyeglasses, frames, sunglasses, you name it. Specifically, I'm going to point to a vendor, a supplier known as Alcon. Alcon manufactures in a few different places throughout the world. One of them is going to be the state of West Virginia. One of them is going to be the state of Texas, and the other is going to be, across the ocean over in Ireland. So to any of my optometrists out there, if you think back to 2020 and 2021 and you were getting those letters from Alcon stating that maybe they weren't going to give you the free samples anymore, or they are apologizing about delays due to supply chain disruption, well, you're going to want to keep those emails, those memos for your records, but you can also go, and I'll flash it on the screen right now, to this website, which has a state-by-state database of all local government COVID-19 shutdown orders. Now, since the shutdown orders are used to determine your eligibility for ERC, you can go here and search for your state, you could search for your county, and you could save these for your records if and when anyone from the IRS to your CPA to your accountant asks for any sort of proof beyond just taking a look at your profit and loss statement. Now, going back to our example about the vendor Alcon, why don't we go ahead and take a look to see if there was a state of emergency issued in the state of Texas. And as you can see here, yes, there was. And if the vendor can say, indeed, it had to do with this governmental order, then you have not only the confirmation from the vendor, but you have cited the state of emergency from the state of Texas. Let's mosey on over to the state of West Virginia. As you can see here, the governor issued a state of emergency as well. And of course, here in my home state of New York, you can see that a state of emergency was issued here, and it backed up the ports for those international shipments for years. So to put it crystal clear, despite the latest news headlines that, in my opinion, are designed just to scare people away from applying for a tax credit that they may be entitled to, just didn't know about before, it is very possible, according to the rules and the regulations and all the amendments, and I'll flash it on the screen again right now, that an employer may be considered to have a full or partial suspension of operations due to a governmental order if, under the facts and circumstances, the business's suppliers are unable to make deliveries of critical goods or materials due to a governmental order that causes the supplier to suspend its operations. So do your own due diligence, do your own homework. I'll leave a link down below in the description. Hop on that searchable website and, create a little file on your desktop, title it ERC, get your 941s, get your profit and loss statements, your employee gross revenue breakdowns, and put those governmental orders in there as well, because you're going to want to be prepared and just have that peace of mind that everything you're doing is on the up and up. All right, big picture key takeaways. I'm seeing a lot of headlines that might be deterring people or having people who have already gotten money for the employee retention credit. I want you to know that yes, there are scammers out there. There are people marketing this credit and saying that it's quote unquote free money, which isn't true. This is money you have already paid and now are entitled to get back. There are people telling you you can qualify if you just had a supply chain disruption. And as we've discussed in this video, that is not exactly true. You're going to, just think like a high school English paper, need to go back, cite your source, have all your ducks in a row, and it will not only be very fruitful, that could be some of the most lucrative financial homework that you've done in a while, but also, like I mentioned before, you're going to be able to sleep better at night just knowing that you have all your documentation and all your records. Now, to any of my business owners who made it this far in the video, who are still on the fence on whether or not they might be eligible for the employee retention credit, I will leave one way you could qualify down below in the description. It is a free questionnaire and no promises. You need to answer it honestly. But if you like what you see and you want to upload some documents, that is one possible way that you could find out if you indeed qualify for this money. Full disclosure, I've partnered with the good folks at ERC Specialists, and they handle all the back-end heavy lifting. So if you do indeed fill out that questionnaire, you'll probably receive an email from me, but also you'll be able to call a real person, get some real answers if you indeed have any questions. So again, I'll leave that link down below in the description, but also feel free to check out my website. It is full of other business, finance, personal finance related content. I also have a podcast, so feel free to check that out as well. Oh, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. All right, as always, I'm Rich, and until next time.